Hey folks, this is DiMella, and today I'd like to talk about how can I love myself? How can I love myself? So let's write those words down. How can I love myself? Okay, how can I love myself? Now, the thing is that we need to know a few definitions first, okay? First of all, we have to know what is self, all right? Well, there is a self with a small s, okay, with a small s, and this will be ego, okay, small s, okay, all right. Next is, we'll say there is a self with a big S, capital S, and this means true self, which is the small s self plus our spirit that lives in us of unconditional love. Okay? We'll call the spirit of unconditional love, we'll call that S-O-U-L, soul. Okay? And that's our true self. That's when our self marries or is combined with or joins, becomes one, when our self, small s, becomes one with our soul, spirit of unconditional love. Okay? There you go. All right. Now we have, so we have ego, we have ourself, and then we have our spirit, right, of unconditional love. Okay. And then we'll talk about some other things as we go along. All right, but how can I love myself? Now I'm going to use the model that I went through, this 12-step model, and we're going to talk about this, okay? First of all, we have to look at I. What are we referring to when we say I? And what are we referring to when we say self? Okay, there are other terms as well, like I don't feel like myself today, or who am I, or I don't like myself, or I love myself, or there's several phrases that we use, and it all depends on which phrase we use and what we mean by I and what we mean by self, because I believe, this is me, DiMella, believes that this is all done subconsciously, or down in below the conscious level, and that when you say certain words, they have a certain feeling that comes with them, and one of those that really doesn't belong anywhere is within us is shame. And so when we say one of those words, we could feel ashamed of ourselves when we say them. So we're going to talk about that. Well, let's go over that 12-step model. And as you know, we have 3 stages, right? There's 1, and there's 2, and there's 3, right? 3 stages. Okay. And the first stage, this is stage 1. All right. This is stage 2. Okay. And this is stage 3. All right. This could be called spiritual childhood. This is called spiritual adolescence. And this would be called spiritual adulthood. Okay. Now, there's a line that goes through the center of it all. We can just call that line, or we can just maybe call that a road, or a path, or a river, whatever you want to call it. It's fine. Goes right through the center. Okay. And this is our way of growing up. Okay. But naturally growing up, the way we're supposed to grow up, is with, and this is where this flows, or this path is, it's called unconditional love. Unconditional love. Okay. Now, if we don't have unconditional love, then we have what's called conditional love, right? Now, conditional love is in stage 1 in our childhood, but it's not called spiritual childhood anymore. And it runs this way. It's just called childhood. And in fact, we can call it, in a sense, toxic childhood. And so in this toxic childhood, okay, this is where a lot of mental illness, the world at large, what we see outside our windows and on TV and everything, and all that. Okay, that's the world. All right, these are children who have not learned, or are too afraid, or have been not unconditionally loved, but only conditionally loved ever since they were born and brought up that way. And they wind up in here. Okay, so they wind up in here. All right, these children, no matter what age they are, if they never start here, and I'm going to put in more detail what this means, called unconditional love, the steps there. If they've never started here, right, they're going to remain in this world, in this toxic world, all their lives. All right. And notice that you have the view from top to bottom. This could be top to bottom. All right. Or if you turn it like this way, okay, it could be left and right. Left and right. Okay. So top to bottom is what? Is hierarchy, right? You're lower than me, I'm higher than you. I have more power, you have less power. All right. And of course, that's not unconditional love, is it? No. Okay. Now, when it comes to thinking mentally. Yes, we understand that in business and sort, there has to be somebody that manages more people under them, right, in business. But that's not what I'm talking about here. There's two traits that everybody must be attentive to, and that is your technical abilities and your relationship. Okay, your technical would be that hierarchy in business, but not your relationship. Okay, your relationship should always be unconditional love. Unconditional love. Okay. So anyway, but if you are stuck in here in conditional love, then you're going to see relationship as I'm better than you, you're better than me, I have more power than you, you have less power, and we're all dependent upon how we see other people. And how we see other people is how we feel about ourselves. And that's all in here, and that's called conditional love. It's a top-bottom view, okay? And this way would be more narcissistic, arrogant, all right? Maybe they used to call character disorder. I think they call them now personality disorder, going this way. This way here, all right, is more what they call, or what they used to call anyway, neurotic, or I'm not good enough, very negative against themselves. I'm just not, because it's how they see themselves in regards to other people. Where here's how they see themselves in regards to other people, but they're always comparing themselves with these people here that don't feel good about themselves or don't love themselves. All right. So this is toxic. This is the toxic world right here. Okay. Now, and that's called conditional love. And like I say, you go this way, and it's the same thing. You see, before they could only view top to bottom when you're in toxicity, so they couldn't see any of this over here, right? Well, now it's left to right, but it's the same thing. Left, right, left wing, right wing. It's all the same thing. And they still cannot see this way. You see? So this all here, everything, especially this way, is invisible to them. Okay? Is invisible to them. Or they just don't want to see it. They're too scared. And so they just block it out of their view. They have no true self-esteem. And we're going to talk about that, self-esteem. All right. So now you have stage 1, this spiritual childhood, stage 2, spiritual adolescence, stage 2, spiritual adulthood. When you go down this normal path of how you're supposed to mature in life. Okay, of how you're supposed to mature in life. All right. So each stage has certain steps in it. Okay. And in the first stage, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it has 6 steps. All right. And we'll just call them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. And the first one is believe. Believe that there is a soul, a spirit of unconditional love that lives in me. 2 is ask it to appear. 3, because you need it for, there's something you need it for something. Okay. And in this case, what you need is it itself, unconditional love. You need to be joined with it, okay? And next you get an answer, you receive an answer. All right, and it'll be yes, because spirit of unconditional love always wants to be with you, always loves you. Number 4, then you focus on each other. We can call this meet or focus, or be mindful, be in the now with each other. All right. And then 5 is communicate. Okay. With what your intention is. So intentionally and explicitly. What is it that you want explicitly? Okay, don't beat around the bush. All right. And what this does is this promotes understanding. Understanding. Okay. Now, number 5 is the step that most people just skip right over. If you skip any of these steps, you are going to have a very difficult time in your life, because because these steps are all meant to flow together, flow on a river together, okay, in sequence. All right. After you understand, okay, what it is you want, and the 5 W's, okay, who, what, when, where, and how. How are you going to connect with whatever you need? Connect with, in this case, connect with your spirit of unconditional love in you, right? How can I love myself? Well, this is how I'm starting to tell you how you can love yourself, all right? And then the 6th one is choose or decide if you want to go forward with what you now understand into the real world. Okay, right now, you are in your world, okay, but now we're going to go into the real world where you're more vulnerable because you don't know much. And so you have to decide, are you going to take a chance? Are you going to take that leap of faith? Okay. Now, believe in a spirit of unconditional love that lives within you. Okay. Well, how do I know it's there? Ask. What I'm going to do, which is to meditate. Close your eyes. You can think of a beautiful place, or wherever you want to meet the spirit of unconditional love, your spirit, and ask for it to come. Because your lifeline to the spirit is your imagination. Is your imagination. Okay? When you see it and when it comes, it can't be anybody that you already know or faces you've already seen or anything like that, because as we know, that's not a spirit. Okay? That's within you. All right? So, but it has to be unconditionally loving. Whatever you think that is right now, believe that is right now, what you want it to be, okay? And then you'll see it appear, okay? Imagine it, and you say, oh, is that it? If it represents what you want, yes, that's it, okay? Then you'll focus, sit with each other, or however you want to meet, okay? And then start communicating with it. Communicating with it. All right? Tell it what you want, okay? And then try to hear it, but only in unconditionally loving words, okay? Because remember, 5 is right here, okay? And so what you're going to get a lot of is all this static distraction coming at you here. And that's going to be in the background, trying to penetrate, trying to get in between your conversation, okay? And at first, it could be very significant, but that's why it's very important to focus. Be mindful and focus. Okay, practice mindfulness. Focus intently. Listen intently. This is where your listening comes in right here. Okay, listen intently. Know the voice of your spirit. Know how it behaves. Know how it looks. Know how it talks. Okay? And if it starts being mean to you, then you know that this static is overpowering. All this toxic static is overpowering the unconditional love that you're having a hard time listening to, hearing. Okay? So you have to focus even more. All right? You got to like narrow in and focus like a laser beam. Okay, and you may get 1 or 2 words here and there, but you'll know that that's an unconditionally loving word. That's an unconditionally loving behavior towards yourself. That's an unconditionally loving way. And you know that is what came from the Spirit. That's what came from the Spirit. As you move further down along this way, by the way, all this will start, the static and everything will start going away the further away from it you get. Okay? So, when you communicate and you listen to it, and you hear those words, who it is, what, where, why, all those, right? And you start understanding, doing the understanding, okay, then you must choose or decide whether you really want to go with that spirit. You're understanding, in this case, what unconditional love, what the spirit of unconditional love is, how the spirit of unconditional love talks, spirit of unconditional love behaves, spirit of unconditional love feels, and how you see it, okay? The sensations that go with where you are and the place where you two are meeting, okay? And so you get all that, and you understand all that, okay? And then you say, choose or decide whether I am going to follow that spirit or I'm not going to follow that spirit. Remember, you want unconditional love. That's a spirit of unconditional love, but you still have to decide. That spirit's not going to make you do anything you don't want to do, because that's what unconditional love is as well. And you choose, you decide whether you want to follow it or not. Okay? So, now some people, well, everybody seems to be called one way or the other, all right, from the spirit, their spirit, okay, wanting to connect with them, okay, and they become what's called aware. Aware. Aware of the soul, spirit of unconditional love. They become aware of a voice or something in them saying, get out of here. All right. And you have to, if you hear and you believe that that is a loving voice, or a voice that you know that you need to listen to, right? You will come out of here and start and go here with believe. You'll believe that that is the spirit of unconditional love calling you from within you. Okay? So first step is to believe. That's okay. And it's in a spirit of unconditional love. All right? Now, this stage 1 is also called the mental and masculine. Okay? The mental. All right? I call it the masculine because it's very logical. The stage is where thinking, logic, mental, the mind, it's very much that, okay? And so when you think about in here, the further away you are in this area from unconditional love, you are the more mentally ill you are, okay? The more mentally ill you are. So if you're like right around in here, well, you might have a mental illness, but it's not, doesn't overcome your functioning in your life, or it doesn't affect your relationships that much, and so forth, but you're still only going to get conditional love. Okay, so this is stage 1. All right. Okay, how can I love myself? All right, how can I love myself? All right, so now let's talk about this in here. All right, the self, small s self, okay, is our ego, and this lives in stage 1. This is why up here, as you get more arrogant, narcissistic, and so forth, right, you get more egotistical. Okay, so this is where your ego is. All right, and your ego can be very vulnerable. You sense it as very vulnerable, especially if you've been bullied, or you've been you've been given a lot of conditional love, and very rigid. Your ego has become traumatized. Okay, so this is your small s, okay, your ego. But if you start coming here to believe and start going down this road, you start having what's called a healthy ego, a healthy self, okay? And this is your toxic self, toxic ego down in here. And I say down in here because really it is kind of like, if you are part of all this and really get into the world and everything through anything from protesting, politics, whatever, religion, and you really get into it all in here, okay, you are making yourself more toxic. Making yourself more toxic, okay? And you're just promoting conditional love. Really is what you're doing. You're just keeping it going, okay? The thing that we need to do is to get out of here, and everybody get on here, so we start slowing this down here until it all stops and dies. Because right now what you have is, we could call this a living hell. All right, but going through this cuts through and is the way out of, starts your natural way of maturing, okay? And no longer are you part of this living hell. You are now starting to become healthy. Okay, so that's stage one, and then we're going to go into the other stages. And how can I love myself? So the small s, self, how can I, who is I and who is self? How can I love myself? All right. And well, just one other thing before I go. Your I, you could say, well, that's me, right? Well, when you're only in here and you don't know any better, this becomes your ego. We know the small s in self is your ego. So you're asking yourself in stage one, how can I love myself? Well, you can't love yourself if all you are is in stage one, because an ego can't love an ego. You know, the only way what you're doing is you're loving yourself, but it's not true love. What it is you are hyping yourself up, your ego, inflating your ego, and you're tricking yourself into thinking that's what love is. But that's not what love is at all. And you're going to wind up also very much giving everybody conditional love, because that's what conditional love is. It's just a hyped up kind of love. There is no such thing as a true conditional love, true love in conditional love. The only kind of love there is unconditional love. But we call it conditional love because that's a term that we use. But really, the only love is unconditional love, and everything else is just a hyped up ego trying to love itself. All right, so that's stage one. So next video, we'll go into the other stages, and we'll see how we can complete this into making it true. Okay.